On this Thursday night, the aftermath of the NDP's sudden exit. Jagmeet Singh faces tough questions after his party walks away from their deal with the Trudeau government.
We know that means that an election now is more likely than before.
But will they really pull that trigger? And what does this mean for the Liberals' future policies? Fighting back against going back to the office.
This is not about returning to an office, it's about the future of work.
The Labour uproar over new hybrid work requirements for federal civil servants. Plus, Ontario's new rules on booze, the convenience and concerns as liquor hits corner store shelves. And an aquatic murder mystery. Did someone shoot this beloved beluga whale, once thought to be a Russian spy?
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in the hot seat today, taking tough questions about his decision to pull support for the Liberal minority government. Singh delivered a message of hope in his first speech since ripping up the deal known as Supply and Confidence. He also had sharp words for both the Liberals and the Conservatives, who are ahead in the polls.
There's a battle ahead of us. The fight for the Canada of our dreams. The fight against Pierre Poilievre and his callous agenda of Conservative cuts. I'm ready for that fight.
But what will that fight look like, and when will it happen? He was asked about it several times today, including by our David Akin. David, did you get a sense of when or if Singh will try to force an early federal election?
Well, Jagmeet Singh simply refused to say, and whenever he was asked, he kept coming back time and again to this line.
We tore up the agreement with Justin Trudeau, and we know that means that an election now is more likely than before.
And he avoided committing himself even to the idea of bringing down the government this September.
I will look at any vote that comes before us, and we will make a decision in the best interest of Canadians, as any minority government normally operates.
Meanwhile, one of the most senior MPs in Singh's caucus, BC's Gord John, said, and I'm quoting, "My work isn't done, and forcing a third election in 5 years isn't very high on my list."
So, David, what's going on here? Does Singh have the freedom to call an election?
No, I don't think he does. And that's because the balance of power in the federal NDP is in the West with the provincial parties. And right now, all New Democrats in the country are focused on two things: getting the NDP re-elected in BC and helping the NDP win in Saskatchewan. And both those provincial elections are happening this October. There's just literally no way that Western New Democrats are prepared to share campaign volunteers, money, and staff resources with their federal cousins. And so that is going to put, I think, a sharp limit on what Singh can do here in Ottawa this fall.
Okay, let's turn back to the Liberals for a minute. How will things change for them?
I talked to Marcy Serks about this. She used to be one of Trudeau's most senior advisors before moving to the private sector, and she says the Liberals now have more freedom to move on the political spectrum.
This is an opportunity for the Liberals to distinguish themselves from the NDP, and they need to.
In fact, you will hear many Liberals who believe their low polling numbers are due partly to having moved too far to the left.
They can actually try to appeal back, move back to the center and try to appeal to the sort of center-right voters, the sort of softer Tory voter, the more traditional blue Liberal voter.
Now, Liberal MPs are going to head to Nanaimo, BC this weekend. It's their summer caucus retreat, and this Singh decision is sure to shape the discussions there. One other Liberal change today: the party is searching for a new election campaign director after the current one, Jeremy Broadhurst, said he was resigning for family reasons. Broadhurst ran the winning Liberal War Room in 2019. He's been a key behind-the-scenes player for the Trudeau team right from the beginning since 2015. Carolyn?
David Akin in Ottawa, thanks for that. There's just 2 months to go until the 2024 presidential election, and with the very first debate between the two candidates days away, campaign rhetoric is heating up. As Jackson Proskow reports, one of America's biggest enemies is weighing in on who he wants to win.
Back in his native New York, Donald Trump campaigned on his economic agenda, promising to create a government efficiency commission headed by far-right billionaire Elon Musk.
Smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing.
While Kamala Harris headed to Pittsburgh to prepare for Tuesday's presidential debate, the first and possibly only time she'll face Trump one-on-one before November.
How is she going to handle the insults? How is she going to handle the bullying from Donald Trump? And I think that both candidates are going to try to get under the skin of the others.
60 days out, and this unexpected race remains way too close to call. The candidates are tied in the key swing state of Pennsylvania and within the margin of error in most battleground state polls.
This race is, today, still a toss-up. But I'd rather be Kamala Harris than Donald Trump, given the directional arrow of the polls.
There's no question Harris has been riding a wave of enthusiasm ever since President Joe Biden dropped out. Wednesday night, she received the endorsement of former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, which could appeal to moderate Republicans.
Because of the danger that Donald Trump poses, I will be voting for Kamala Harris in this election.
Even Russian President Vladimir Putin has taken note, appearing to joke as he said he'd support Harris. The day after the U.S. Justice Department alleged Russia has been funding a network of pro-Trump social media influencers in the U.S.
Mr. Putin ought to stop talking about our elections, period. He shouldn't be favoring anybody, one way or another.
It all suggests an unpredictable 2 months ahead, with the stakes so high and just a few undecided voters in a handful of states likely to decide this historic presidential contest. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
Well, Trump is campaigning for the White House while fighting numerous legal battles. Today, his lawyers entered a not guilty plea on federal charges related to plotting to overturn the results of the 2020 election based on unfounded allegations of voter fraud. Trump's lawyers repeatedly sparred with the judge about how the case should proceed. There have been months of delays, and just last week, a special counsel filed an updated indictment to reflect the U.S. Supreme Court's landmark ruling that former presidents have some immunity against charges arising from certain acts as president. Trump denies he pushed officials to reverse the 2020 election results and encouraged the January 6th Capitol riot to delay certification of Biden's victory. Dozens of federal public servants here in Canada joined a rally in Ottawa today, protesting a mandate that forces them back to the office at least 3 days a week, starting Monday. As Mackenzie Gray reports, public sector unions argue the move isn't justified.
Fight, fight, fight to win!
An unusually outspoken Ottawa as public servants push back.
We're seeing these unions coming together, maybe for the first time ever, in the biggest way ever, to fight one of the most anti-worker policies that we've ever seen.
The new policy, most federal government employees will have to work an additional day a week in the office, now up to 3 days of their own choosing, starting next week.
During the pandemic, we saw an increase in productivity and work-life balance because parents were able to cover off their childcare responsibilities. They didn't have to pay for childcare before and after work.
And it's not just work-life balance. Civil servants say they're more productive at home compared to being in the office, where they now often don't have their own workspace.
I spend most of my job on team and on team meeting, and there's no real plus value for me to go back to the office.
But unfortunately for the union members, it's the employer, the federal government, who has the legal right to determine where work is done.
I'll bet you every employee would say they'd love to have the right to choose. But just because that's a preference doesn't mean it becomes an entitlement.
Yeah, solidarity hot dog.
Remote work was a central issue in last year's public servant strike, but unions were unable to get work from home language in the collective agreement.
They say, it's not a collective agreement. Well, what do you think is going to happen next time? We're going to put it in the darn collective agreement.
The Privy Council office, who made no one available for an interview, says workers need to come back to provide better services for Canadians and build a stronger work culture, Carolyn. But both the feds and the union have no hard proof to support their arguments.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. Now to breaking news out of New Brunswick. The RCMP has issued an alert for a man believed to be carrying weapons with the intent to use them. Keith Martin is wanted in the community of Eskenovaditch, First Nation, also known as Burnt Church. People are being asked to lock their doors and stay inside. We'll share more updates as we get them. A 15-year-old girl is in a Saskatoon hospital with serious injuries tonight after she was allegedly set on fire by another teenage girl. It happened at Evan Hardy Collegiate High School. Police believe the act was intentional and have arrested a 14-year-old girl. A teacher who was attempting to intervene was also taken to hospital. Classes are cancelled at the school for tomorrow. People in a community near Calgary are being told to stay alert after a grizzly bear attack. The victim suffered serious but non-life-threatening injuries. And as Jamie Dahl reports, officials say it's the same bear that killed someone 3 years ago.
On the foothills of Alberta's Rocky Mountains, Fish and Wildlife officers are scouring creeks and coulees from the sky, looking for a mama bear with 3 cubs, believed to be involved in an encounter that left a bow hunter with serious injuries.
We believe that this instance was a defensive encounter. Wrong place, wrong time, and a mother bear that was defending her cubs.
160 acres has now been closed and traps are set up. People in the area are keeping their eyes peeled.
I usually walk, like I do a 4-kilometer loop, but I haven't been doing that this week with the dog.
Making yourself aware of where you are, your surroundings, what's going on with that, what's out of place.
Now, this bear is no stranger to Fish and Wildlife officers. DNA tests have confirmed it is the same bear that was involved in a deadly encounter that claimed the life of a beloved Calgary professor 3 years ago.
My heart goes out to the person who is injured and their family, and I hope that they're able to recover quickly from this without too much trauma.
Dr. David Lertzman died after an encounter with the mama grizzly and her then single cub while trail running near his home about 40 kilometers from last weekend's incident. His wife says he wouldn't want any ill will to come to the bear.
She's just a mama. She's just taking care of her babies, just like humans do.
Fish and Wildlife officers say given the history of the bear and the area it happened, she does fit the criteria to be euthanized. But they have to find her first. And because there are so many sows with cubs on this landscape right now, that could be a difficult task. Jamie Dahl, Global News, Madden, Alberta.
Team Canada continues to rack up the medals at the Paris Paralympics. Ontario's Tess Routliffe grabbed her second medal of the Games, a bronze in the women's 100-meter breaststroke. Quebec's Aurélie Rivard brought home gold in the women's 400-meter freestyle. And on the track, Quebec's Brent Lakatos also struck gold in the men's 800-meter wheelchair race. Canada now has 20 medals. More access to alcohol in Ontario coming up. Why not everyone's feeling buzzed about liquor hitting the province's convenience stores.
But don't look back in anger, I heard you say.
The UK's competition watchdog has launched an investigation into Ticketmaster and its sales for next year's highly anticipated Oasis reunion. It says Ticketmaster is using dynamic pricing, a move typically used in flight sales when demand fluctuates. Fans have been complaining they waited online for hours and paid more than double the original cost of tickets. Well, today is the first day convenience stores across Ontario are allowed to sell some types of alcohol. Those that have opted in can now stock beverages, including beer and wine. It's all part of Premier Doug Ford's plan to modernize the alcohol market, but it wasn't supposed to take effect until 2026. Colin DeMello reports.
In a West Toronto convenience store, unmistakable signs that alcohol is available. The owner, Sam Lee, has converted half of his business into a mini liquor mart.
I like to add the quarter extra. This is good selling.
His store is selling pallets of product, from beer to ready-to-drink beverages, even a small selection of wine.
I'm going to bring more stock, right? That's selling more alcohol.
For consumers in Ontario, this is the most significant shift in the sale of alcohol since the end of the Prohibition era. By the end of this year, the Ford government hopes to see at least 8,000 new points of sale.
We're leveling the playing field.
The Ford government agreed to pay the beer store $225 million to end an exclusivity contract over the sale of suds. And the government has refused to say how much the provincially run liquor store stands to lose out of this deal. Add to that, the government placed zero restrictions on location, allowing gas stations to sell alcohol directly across from Ontario schools.
let's expand alcohol sales. I'm not opposed to that, but let's do it in a financially responsible way, and let's do it in a way that protects public health and safety.
Back at Sam Lee's Convenience, curious customers are already canvassing the inventory.
I live at 200 meters, so for me here is very convenient.
Daily shoppers now have something new to grab and go. Colin DeMello, Global News.
A pair of vigils was held for Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew. Thousands gathered at the Saddle Dome in Calgary last night. The memorial there will remain in place for 13 days, the number Johnny wore throughout his career. There was another tribute in Columbus, Ohio, where Johnny was playing for the past 2 seasons. The Gaudreau brothers were killed last week, hit by an alleged drunk driver. Global National will be back in a moment. The Assembly of First Nations is calling for urgent reform of a program meant to boost the Indigenous economy. A Global News investigation with researchers from First Nations University found Canada's Indigenous procurement program can be easily exploited by non-Indigenous companies, allowing them to access billions in contracts. Melissa Ridgen joins us now with more. Melissa, AFN's national chief, Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak, is weighing in about who needs to lead this program now.
Well, exactly. Woodhouse-Nepenak and other Indigenous leaders say that bureaucrats and politicians have been negligent in their handling of this program that's meant to grow and support the Indigenous economy. The fact that this program can be so easily abused by people who just check a box claiming to be Indigenous is why Woodhouse-Nepenak, along with Métis and Inuit leaders, say if Ottawa is serious about closing these loopholes, they'll need to involve and listen to Indigenous leadership, as they should have from the start.
In a statement, the Assembly of First Nations National Chief said the process of recognizing First Nations identity must be led by First Nations to ensure legitimacy and validity. And this Global News investigation revealed significant failures, including a lack of verification and cases where non-Indigenous businesses exploit the system to secure significant government contracts by falsely claiming Indigenous identity.
Indigenous Services Canada says they'll work with the Assembly of First Nations, Inuit and Métis to transform and improve the program, but there's no word yet on what that will entail. Our reporting has some calling for more than just a policy overhaul to deter people from falsely identifying as Indigenous.
There is a role here for police and justice and the court system. I think that if the groups who were being targeted and defrauded started to lay complaints and we saw charges go through the court system more, you would have a lot of people starting to shut this stuff down.
The Canadian Council for Indigenous Business fears the fallout of Ottawa's mismanagement will impact the very people the Indigenous procurement program is meant to support.
Unfortunately, there are times where this conversation is weaponized against individuals and organizations. And I think we all need to be really careful about, our investigations the intention is to protect that space and opportunity.
In addition to outright fraudulently claiming to be Indigenous to access this program, the Liberal government's expansive interpretation of who gets to be Indigenous in this country will be top of mind when Parliament returns September 16th. Carolyn.
Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg, thank you.
I have one simple request, and that is to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads.
Okay, it sounds preposterous, but next, we'll tell you what happened to the beluga found with a harness and a sign strapped to its head. The death of a beluga whale off the coast of Norway is shrouded in mystery. The whale, long speculated to be a spy for Russia, was found dead with what some allege are gunshot wounds. As Heidi Petracek reports, some groups are now calling for a criminal investigation.
Curious, intelligent, friendly. That's how this beluga whale was described.
He was very loving, and he had a way, an indescribable way of connecting with humans.
But its life was surrounded by controversy. Now, so is its death.
This is a situation that we've been worried about for quite a while.
When it first appeared off the Norwegian coast in 2019, the beluga was wearing what looked like a camera harness labeled Equipment St. Petersburg, sparking rampant rumors it was a spy whale. The idea, not entirely impossible, marine mammals are trained by military around the world, as seen in this video from the U.S. Navy. Speculation the beluga in Norway could have come from Russia led to its name, a combination of the Norwegian val for whale and Russian President Vladimir Putin to create Valdemir.
The tourists wake him up while he's sleeping and order him to do tricks.
But with popularity came problems. Vessel strikes and entanglements, uncontrolled human interaction. One whale advocated moving it north in the hopes it would join other belugas. But the plan stalled after a different group, Marine Mind, launched an objection, arguing it was safer to keep the whale where it was. Valdemir was found dead Sunday.
One whale was able to see his body and take pictures of the wounds, and these wounds were quite scary.
Doesn't take a forensic scientist to see that whale has been shot with bullet holes and even had one bullet still lodged in his body.
The Norwegian government says an official necropsy will take several weeks. One Whale and NOAA, an animal rights group, want a criminal investigation.
It is a cautionary tale. Friendly whale, government decides to make a decision, people protest, back away, whale dies.
This beluga whale story ending the same way it began, with questions. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
The 49th Toronto International Film Festival kicked off today with a celebration of one of Canada's most beloved bands.
The secret rooms of engagement are hard to ignore.
A free public sing-along paid tribute to the Tragically Hip following the world premiere of a new documentary about the band.
No dress rehearsal.
The Tragically Hip No Dress Rehearsal is a 4-part docuseries directed by Mike Downey, the brother of lead singer Gord Downey, who died in 2017 after a battle with cancer.
Come back to town this morning.
We leave you tonight with more of that tribute to the hip outside the Royal Alexandra Theatre. That's Global National for this Thursday. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Thanks for watching.